Hi, I'm Andy Jones, and today I'm excited to show you my experience with working with a new product. Zerotouch.ai got in contact and said, hey, Andy, as an MVP, would you try our great new product out? Now, I'm an Intune guy at heart, as you can tell by this channel, but just occasionally something comes along to surprise us, and that's exactly what's happened with Zerotouch.ai. When we think about Microsoft Intune and Windows Autopilot, we all know this to be a great feature. But there's always room for improvement, and Zerotouch have introduced some great new enhancements which I think many companies will welcome. Let's face it, as IT admins, anything that automates or makes our device management easier is always going to be seen as a positive. So in this video, I'm going to concentrate on the use of Zerotouch.ai as a companion to the Autopilot enrollment experience. So let's take a look. So when you first come into this portal, you're going to see quite a good interface. You've got some really good information relating to your devices and the state of them. So for example, I've got two devices up here. I've got quite a handy map, so it's going to locate where the devices are. You've got information relating to the updates that's going on or has been deployed, and also trending applications. But when we go through to the menu on the left hand side here, this is where you're going to get the options for configuration. So Zerotouch can be used as an MDM in its own entirety, okay? You're not reliant on other MDM systems. We are going to use it here in relation and as a companion to Intune, but you can use this independently. It's also a UEM, or Unified Endpoint Management System. As you can see here, you've got kind of Microsoft, Apple and Google. So that's covering, your Mac OS, your iOS, and also things like Google or Chrome OS. So you've got a good scope of devices. It's also an RMM, or Remote Management and Monitoring tool. So you've got the remote scope and remote access into your devices, which we'll see in a little bit. But what we're interested in is creating this autopilot flow or autopilot enrollment experience. And to do that, we go into management, and this is where you get the power of all your configuration really. And they have something called execution orchestration. You can create this for the different device types, so Microsoft, Apple and Android, but I'm going to pick Microsoft here because we're interested in autopilot. Now before we go and configure this, you will need to connect into your Azure tenant or your Entra ID in order to draw information into this to help you configure. If you go into Entra or your Azure tenant, you're going to have to set up some application registration. So as you can see, I've got this Zerotouch MDM and SSO here. Now that process is going to take you around 30 or 40 minutes to set up initially. There's a little bit of config such as groups you need to do within your Intune as well. Once you've done that and you go back into Zerotouch, that allows you then to draw in and instantly gain access to your groups and policies and even applications, right? So that's quite powerful. Essentially what it's going to mean is this experience that you're going to create from enrollment can be dedicated from Zerotouch, but you might want to combine it with your policies and everything that you've already got configured within Intune. So next up, we've got these three options that are switched on by default when you go into this and create this flow. But you've got some powerful instruments here, right? You've got driver installation, OS installation or update installation, and force encryption. Now, what this is essentially telling you is that the drivers are going to install during that enrollment process, and it's not just going to be the OEM or pre-built drivers that you get from the factory. Zerotouch have got APIs hooking into the OEMs or hardware providers, so it's going to do a check on that device. It's going to look at the model and the make of that device, and it's actually going to pick up the latest drivers and inject them in. We'll see this happening basically in real time, which is another powerful feature. When it comes to the Windows update, it will check on the device to see if there's any updates to be had, and it will report back to you, and you can actually make that happen in real time and do that update. From a force encryption point of view, you're not reliant on Intune here as a policy. Now you do get quite a few options in terms of configuring BitLocker encryption for your Windows devices within Intune. So what this is going to do is going to inject an AES 256 encryption. That might not be the encryption that you need, so make sure you select that based on your actual requirement. You've got some other options here, suppressing the driver progress, GUI, auto log on. You can create a message box as you need to as provisioning finishes, or if it fails. Moving on down the screen here, you've got apps and policies. If I click on this, this is where, again, you're going to see some injection of your policies that are come through from Intune. So if you've already got some created, let me click on this. These policies are directly brought in from your Intune tenant. And what I can do is, if I go into policies here, I can just drag these across. Now, these might be policies, like I say, you've pre-created. And not only can I actually include them as part of their enrollment, but I can decide the order in which they're going to go. And this is particularly powerful because not only are you seeing it here, but you can actually decide the order in which they install. If we look at administrative template policies, I've just got a couple here, right? So, but this is your ADMX policies, which you can quickly choose and add in at the same time. And not only that, I've got CIS benchmark policies. If I jump across to my other tab here and let's open up the policies, I'll give you a quick look at this. So we've got the three options, but if we go into Microsoft, you can see we've got a number of options available. Baseline policies, driver policies, group policies. I can go and add a group policy. We saw that earlier, Windows 10 and 11, and the different breakdowns of the versions. But I can go into Intune policies, and this is where it's pulled in. My Intune policies are configured through that connection. But what we also have is this CIS benchmarks, and I can go and create CIS benchmarks straight off. So if I click on the Windows 11 Enterprise, for example, I can select the level. So level 1 or 2, you've got different levels in CIS. And then if I click on the select policies, look, we've got a number of the options. These are all the policies that are defined under CIS. Now, I do think this is quite powerful, and the reason I say that is because I've been through this as an experience fairly recently, and actually to configure this within Intune takes some time and effort. So to have this as a pick off and tick off list, if it effectively, we can click one and then we can enable it, and it will give you the detail of what that policy is as well. Now, you might decide to use a baseline security policy within Intune, which is a similar approach, but it might not be the standard that you're adhering to. So let's flip back here. So next up here is applications on the right hand side, and you've got a selection from your custom apps. I don't think I do. I've got one in there, a favorite obviously to many people. And then we've got these pre-packaged applications, and we select these from a library effectively that we create for ourselves. But I'll go ahead and show you that in a minute. But you've also got the modern office applications as well. And in this scenario, if I go over to the apps and scripts pane, I've got this drag and drop facility, which covers my apps and scripts that I might want to inject or order as part of my enrollment. So with Windows Autopilot, the scenario is the user gets the device, they open it up, they log in, it goes through the Autopilot experience, but it tells them that apps are being installed, but you have no way of telling the order in which they're being installed. This is going to give you that level of transparency. It's going to give you the visibility, if you like, of what's going on. Now, I would say that that doesn't necessarily mean that every end user wants to see that, but it does help from a support perspective, and it does give the end user that ability to know where they are as part of that enrollment process. So I think that's a great way of giving that information back, and it's certainly something that the Intune community have been looking for. So let me show you where these apps come from. If I go back into my other tab, I don't want to go out of that config for the moment. I'll go into apps here on the left hand side, and this is the selection of applications that I've created for my environment really. But if I want to add one, I can just literally add one there. I can choose my platform. Let's go into Microsoft, and I've got this option for Intune apps or Zerotouch apps. If I go Intune apps, what this is going to do is going to look into the applications I've pre-created in my Intune tenant, and it gives me that visibility of what I've got. If we go back to the options here and we go into Zerotouch apps, Now we've got this whole collection, these whole selection of options that we can tap into. I've got my pre-packaged apps, which are packaged directly by Zerotouch, right? But they're also looking to get this injection from Winget, Chocolatey, etc. But I've got PowerShell, MSIs, execute, all the kind of options that you might need. If I had select pre-package here, I can pretty much search on any application. So let me search for something more obscure like, I don't know, grid tracker or something, and see if we can get that. If I click on this plus here, I'm going to get the options available to me. Now this particular app has only got a 32-bit option, but if I go back into the main list and the core application, let's go into Google for Chrome, for example. I've got 32-bit or 64-bit. Let's have a look at Edge, what we got for Edge. You know, we've got similar options going on. So depending on your own personal deployment requirements, you can make that decision. And if I go into the edit of one of these, let me edit the Microsoft Edge, I can then make the decisions on whether it's installed on the user or device context. I can put my command lines in, add it to a category if I want to, or decide whether it's a featured app, and then I can submit that when I'm happy. So you've got all the options here that you would normally see from the main apps packaging services that are out there. So this is extremely powerful. The other key point to highlight is that while this is your library that you can use and inject into your orchestration flow for your enrollment, you can also populate or submit that direct into Intune. As you can see here, some of these applications where it says Intune is yes, so I can push that directly from Zerotouch into Intune if I want. I can assign it to the specific groups on Intune as well, so I can either install it directly or I can unassign it within Intune. So you've got a lot of flexibility in and around these applications. It also tells you when it's been modified, and this is going to allow you to do all your patching. So you're going to get that extra layer of automation, and it's also going to make it easier from an IT admin or management perspective. So as you can see, Zerotouch has got some great features packed into it, and we've only just touched the surface on what its capabilities are. But if you are interested in looking at the Autopilot experience, I think you might like this next bit. Right, so I want to take you through this whole enrollment experience if I can. We've got our apps and scripts set up. We've got policies in here as part of our enrollment, and we've decided where we're going to go for driver and OS updates, etc. I've given it a name. But before we set this up and go through the experience, I want to go over to Intune quickly and just give you a view of what's in there. So essentially we've got our physical Windows device, and what I want to do is show you how you set this up from an enrollment perspective. We're going to enrollment, and then I go into the deployment profiles. You will need to set up a deployment profile specifically for this to be connected and work with Autopilot. So if I look at the properties here, I've got a standard user-driven out-of-the-box experience, but I'm also giving it a name. There's a name template I've given it, so it'll be prefixed with ZT, and then I'm including my Autopilot devices and users. Now naturally I've got the hardware hash of this device and I've assigned it to this group, so you will need to do that as well. We also need to go and set up the enrollment status page, right? So if I go into the enrollment status page here, I've got one specifically for Zerotouch Autopilot. Let's have a look at the properties, and yes, what we're doing is we're actually installing an MSI, a Zerotouch app, okay, that I've got, which is an MSI application, and I'm going to block this enrollment based around this application only. So in this scenario, what's going to happen, you're going to go through the normal Autopilot experience, and as that finishes, basically that app is going to start up and it's going to give you that enhanced experience, so you can see the applications and the policies being applied. I'll quickly show you the MSI here. If we go into apps and Windows, I've got this Zerotouch app here. So you will need to install this and give it a command line so that it will start up as needed. And I've given it a logo and assigned it to my Zerotouch devices and users. So once you've got all that set up, we can switch over to the device and go through the out-of-box experience with Autopilot. So for this experience, we will initially go through the general Autopilot experience, right? And I've got a hardware device here. I've got a Microsoft Surface Pro. but we put our credentials in. We might need to go through MFA, as you might expect, and the device will restart before the Zerotouch MSI is deployed down to the device. But what I want to show you is we're going to flip back between Microsoft Intune portal and Zerotouch just to see things happening in real time. So we just popped into the Intune Admin Center, and as you can see with this device, it's going through the Autopilot experience. And if I just expand this here, you can see that it's given my username against it. So it's not gone through the Zerotouch renaming yet. Now, if I go over to my Zerotouch portal and I do a refresh, again, it's not appeared yet. And that's because the Zerotouch MSI hasn't kicked in. When it does, it should appear here, and we should see the real-time updates coming in. So I've just refreshed, and now we can see our device appear. It's finished the normal Autopilot enrollment. If I go over to Intune here quickly, let's do a refresh. You can see now that that device has been renamed with the Zerotouch template. Let's go back. If I go into this device, that one there, I can start seeing all the information come in. So you can see already it's gathered information about manufacturer, where the disk is encrypted. We've got the hardware information and IP information of that device. If I look at the applications, for example, it's given me a list of all the things that have installed and basically things that aren't. If I go into hardware, it's going to give me a drop down of all the recommended, successfully installed, for all the hardware elements that I can manage. I can actually go into the device manager, right? So I can look at all the components of the device if I need to. This is extremely extensive, and it's basically giving you all the asset management information that you might need for this device. If I look at the patch management, the patch management is telling me that there are OS update changes. For example, there's one that's required. I could click that and then just hit the update, and that should go ahead and do the update for that. So in real time, we're seeing information. And remember, this is still going through the enrollment. It's just started. I've got the view update history as well, so I can get a kind of rundown of what's happened on that device. From a policy perspective, we only had a couple of policies, right? And one of them was the CIS benchmark. But you can see that these are available but not yet installed on the device. And finally, if I look at the flow status, this is going to give me information as well about all those applications that I've got in my orchestration. If I click back over to that device, I can remote into that device as it's actually enrolling, which is incredible, right? I can get a browser which basically is going to give me the access to that. And look, this is the actual device. It's telling me it's, you know, information from the BitLocker. It's giving me updates on the app status, got computer information, and this is the order, the orchestration of those applications that are installing, which is pretty damn impressive, right? If I go over here to the services, it's telling me there's driver updates. It's downloading those. Visibly, I can see this as it's going on. Now, you don't get this level of information from normal Autopilot experience. I've also got the Windows updates here. So it's giving me the information where it's downloading and how close it is to installing. I think this is extremely powerful. The other thing to notice is I have got some branding. So I've put my own branding on here, and I could make other brand changes if I wanted to. So remember, this is real time. I'm actually on that box as it's enrolling. Let's go back over here just to kind of highlight some of the other powerful things you can do on this device. You know, from a software point of view, you've got all these options here: uninstall, update, for example. From a system perspective, I can do all of this. I can shut down, log off. I can do a BitLocker rotate. So all the management and IT admins and support type of components and actions that you might want to perform, I can actually go and install an application, right? I can do that, select an application and go through the install process. And the other thing is, if I wanted to, I can then do a remote shell into this device. Remember, it's an RMM tool. So if I wanted to run up PowerShell as an admin user, I can do that. This is actually going to run the PowerShell directly on that machine enrolling. You can see how easy it becomes for IT admins to actually view what's going on and make changes as they need to. The other thing is they'll be able to troubleshoot this if they have a batch of devices and they want to go onto one to actually see it in motion. So let me close this down, and we're going to go back onto the device quickly so we can just see the update. So now we've got Notepad, we've got 7-zip, and we've currently got the Google Chrome installing. So hopefully you can see the power in having this information available to you. And like I say, not every end user necessarily wants to see this information, but you can make it visible if it's important. Back over here on the driver updates, it's giving me the installations completed now. So drivers have installed, and we've got our encryption key, TPM, etc. Let me actually show you that. So if I go into this device again, I can see the encryption here. If I click this, it's going to give me the actual key that I'm needed for this specific device. Back over on the device here, so we've got, the installation of drivers and OS updates is now completed, and we've got our rings complete, which is great. And it's telling us provisioning has completed successfully. So I can hit the OK there. Let's switch over to the applications, have a look at those. I can close this down, and it takes us to the desktop. We can see automatically that we've got the applications as part of our flow installed. Let's have a look here. And we've got this Zerotouch Software Center. So in replacement to the company portal, we've now got this Zerotouch Software Center. I can open that up. And if I do have any on-demand applications that I've set down to this device, or made them available, I should say. For example, I did push the Firefox down, but because we already have it installed on the device, I can see it on the left here, it's telling me it's already installed, and I've got the ability to remove it if I want to. I've got others that I can go ahead and actually install manually as well. So once you get out of that initial enrollment experience, this is where you're going to see some updates come in, and you'll also get notifications as well as they come through. Before we finish up here, and I know this has been quite a long video, I just want to show you what's going on within Intune Portal. Okay, so we've got our device. This is our device that was gone through both the Autopilot experience and the Zerotouch experience together, right? This is our physical Microsoft Surface device. So let me click into that. And I just want to go through and show you. So we've got, again, we can see the hardware here, but it's probably not going to be as extensive as the information you're going to get from the Zerotouch. We can look at the device configuration. I do have some configuration profiles, right, that were pushed down to this device. So what that's showing you is we've got policy, we've got apps that's pushed down from the Zerotouch experience, but also from Intune and the Autopilot experience. Okay, so we've got that as a success there. If I look at the recovery keys, we did see the BitLocker recovery key over on the Zerotouch portal, but you've got the same one here. Okay, this is the same key. And then if I look at the managed apps, there's some observation that I made here, and that is that yes, we're pushing this MSI, okay, this Zerotouch, which we showed down to the device. That's necessary to kick that experience off. But we've also got the company portal, all right? I pushed that down to the device, and 7-zip. Now we had 7-zip being pushed down from Zerotouch. So as you can see there, it's showing it's not installed. And that's the experience that you would expect. So to summarize that, we've got policy, we've got apps that are deployed from the Zerotouch and from the Intune portal. Now it may be that you don't want to do both, because it does mean you're going to have to switch back and forth between both. And essentially what you should probably do is just push this Zerotouch app down to the device, so it's clean in here, and you've got a full kind of itemization of, you know, the policies being pushed from Zerotouch. Really, that's up for grabs, and I think you can make your own decisions on that, but I wanted to show you the full capability. So thanks very much for watching this video. I know we got under the hood, we looked at a few of the nuts and bolts really of deploying this, but hopefully that's given you some insight in how you might set up Zerotouch and how it might be used to enhance that Autopilot experience. I've got to say a big thanks to Zerotouch themselves for giving me access to their platform in order to test this out. So for now, thanks very much, and hopefully we'll see you again.